Good morning, everyone. Kate Bailey with EcoCycle, and I did want to plug that if you missed yesterday's presentation or you want to see it again, we are going to do a webinar in a couple weeks with a lot of that same information, and again, the report is on the website as well. So with that, excited to have brands and packaging suppliers here on the stage representing a fairly complete supply chain almost here, which is what we're trying to do. And so I want to give everyone a chance. We'll just pass the mic down. We'll just get a quick name and who you are, what you do, and then we'll start off with some intro questions.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Glenn Treliving, and I'm a packaging supplier. I've been in packaging since about 1993, so I realize that some people in this room weren't even born in 1993. But I've been in flexible packaging since about 2001. And it's been an interesting industry. Since 2001, the flexible packaging industry, as you see in the statistics, and the use of plastics has really escalated. So it's been interesting. But now, with the churn of sustainability, it's a real paradigm shift in the industry. We're being challenged to do things that we haven't been in the past, and it's a good challenge, and it's for the right reasons.
Kirsten Lee with Only Natural Pet. I'm the Director of Product Development and kind of newly with more of a focus on innovation.
Brian Steinwagner, Executive Vice President at Morris Packaging, and I lead our sustainability and R&D within the company. And again, I've been in this business for 30 plus years, and been in it before sustainability was even a word in packaging.
And Robert Armstrong, WellPet. I manage process and innovation development, and I've been with WellPet for 5 years in the industry for going on 8.
So I really appreciate the Kashi talk this morning because it really got me thinking about transition. And I feel like that's exactly where we are with packaging. We're not where we want to be. We're transitioning to something more recyclable, more recoverable, less impact on our environment. And it's all about working together on that supply chain, that collaboration toward that future vision. So I thought that transitional phrase was perfect to kick off our panel here. So we're going to have plenty of time to talk about the challenges and the barriers, but I wanted to start off a little optimistic. And so I love to ask the magic wand question. So for the panel, I would love to hear if you can wave your magic wand, if you really could make one change, flip a switch today, and change one thing about the packaging system, how it's made, the suppliers, the brands, the pricing, anything. Sky's the limit. It's the magic wand question. I'd love to just get some thoughts on kind of what would be the one thing you would love to do if you just had that magic power.
All right, I'll start. So our brands are Wellness, Old Mother Hubbard, Sojo's, our main 3 brands. And I think the number one thing is we run into when we talk about moving to a better sustainable package is getting the same quality of appearance. So if I can wave a magic wand and have recyclable or store drop-off ready bags that look as good as our foil bags, foil-lined multi-layer bags for our core and wellness brands, that would be an easy win, especially if the cost was the same. So since it's magic.
That's a good question. I'd like to have a market, as you talked yesterday, Kate, about the market at the end. Because right now, the front half of the packaging supply is ahead of the back half. So we've developed packaging that's 100% recyclable, store-ready drop-off in SUPs, in flat-bottom 5-pound packaging, 15-pound, 30-pound packaging for quad seals. We've got it certified by Trex. The problem is the back half, the MRFs don't support that right now because there's not a market for that resin. So in order to drive that forward, we really need to have a supply demand for that resin, and that'll increase the use of the 100% recyclable going forward.
All right. I guess from a brand perspective, I would love the silver bullet. We get inundated with so much information, whether it's PCR, recyclable, compostable, and each one that we went through yesterday has its pros and cons, and so it can be a little overwhelming to or just really know what the correct direction is, what the best direction is for packaging, and where we can make the most impact. So I would like just the one silver bullet answer.
Well, I'm here to tell you the silver bullet doesn't exist. So that's the bad news. The good news is, as Brian says, we're a lot closer than people actually think. Historically, the packaging industry, I wouldn't say has been lazy, but we haven't been challenged to be sustainable. So we have made a lot of packages in the past out of mixed plastics, and a lot of the people in the industry here that have food have a polyester polyethylene bag, or in the case of WellPet, have polyester metallized polyethylene. And so that has been an easy package for us to produce in the past. Very efficient, not an issue. It provides the features and strength and all the things you people need. But now going to a sustainable and a single polymer is a little bit more challenging, but I think we've got there now. But as I'll echo Brian's comment, which is the back half. So, I think more needs to be done in the collection, in getting this back into what it was. The Association of Plastics Recyclers have that test where you take a package, you churn it up, you make another package. So we need to now be able to collect all of the good packaging, and it's going to be the challenge of sorting what's good and what's bad in order to make recycling, which Caitlin did when she was back in college, a much easier solution. In North America, it's still relatively cost prohibitive, but unfortunately, due to a large proliferation of bad material, countries where it is cost effective, like China, kind of cut us off and said, you know what, you're sending far too much of these mixed plastics and not enough good plastics, so we can then turn it back into lawn chairs and you can sell it back to you. We need to do more about the collection. I think I agree with Brian 100%.
I forgot I was supposed to be on this panel. So I'm just providing kind of the collaborative approach and from PSC's perspective. So if I could wave a magic wand, I would like there to be some agreement on solutions. Because I feel like there's a lot of people going in a lot of different directions, and it creates dilution of solutions in some ways because there's so many people who just aren't quite sure, or they were sold something that sounded so amazing, but it turned out on the back end to not be what they had hoped it to be. So I would really like for the industry to come together around a few things and stop trying to do all of the things and maybe pick a couple of things that we can all do really well in a way that creates participation from everybody. So I think that's if I could wave a magic wand.
Excellent. So now if anyone has magic wands that you can give all of us, all the problems will be solved and we can go enjoy our day. So I think we'll come back to that idea that Caitlin hit on is kind of how can we all work together toward some more common solutions. But so we talked a little bit about vision, where we want to go, and I want to talk a little bit more first about some of the challenges. And going in different directions is something that I often hear, sustainability and marketing, going in different directions. So I'd love to hear from anyone who wants to chime in. I would love to hear a success story of where, sustainability was able to work with marketing and say, okay, the packaging doesn't look quite as good, or we can come to this compromise, or somewhere where the marketing didn't trump it. Particularly in the recycling sector, we are at the back end of always coming into all of these marketing things, where there's the Guinness can now has the plastic ball in there. It makes it more foamy, right? Like, we don't want that now. It's plastic in our aluminum. Products like that for us are quite problematic. And so I hear that throughout the sustainability space. So does anyone want to chime in with a positive example or maybe a work in progress?
So with our partners, our customer partners, we've transitioned a large number of them to 30% recycled content in their packaging. And this is a hard number that we can show. So unlike, as Kate said, the additives that you add in and it hopefully breaks down in labs and maybe in the 5 certified landfills out there, we're not into that. We want hard numbers. So between our customers and our partners, we have, with our 30% recycled content, we have taken, and starting in 2020, we're on the pace. So beginning 2020, we will take 6 million pounds of plastic out of the stream. That was gonna go into a landfill, has been used in this packaging. By the end, with other customers coming on board and doing the transition, by the end of 2020, we're gonna be on pace of about 10 million pounds of material that has not went to a landfill. And from the water bottle standpoint, all of our polyester comes from recycled water bottles. In a 30-pound pet food bag, it's approximately a little over 2 water bottles per bag. So we've recycled, we're on pace to recycle around 60 million water bottles in 2020.
Ryan, can you speak? Awesome. Can you speak to any challenges that you have had with that in terms of getting, does it look the same? Does it act the same?
One thing that's allowed us to be successful is we failed a lot. So in order to, in order to hit a home run, you got to swing the bat, but a lot of times you strike out. So we've got the home run now. The biggest thing was trying to, one, secure the supply chain. You want to be able to give that supply chain to your customer, not go, well, I can do this, but only on a limited aspect. So we had to lock up the supply chain. The look does not change on the polyester. It's got a slight bluish tint to it, but nothing that changes the appearance of your packaging or your colors at all. And the other thing was basically taking out some of the impurities in the resin, and we conquered that as well, and bearing it in the core of the polyethylene. We're running 5-7 layer coexes, so we're really encapsulating that recycled resin into the core of the material, and you don't have those impurities that you see on the package.
Great. So failing forward really is a key message.
One thing we're actually doing it a slightly different way, but in the same way, we're trying to eliminate polyester from our bags and in the plant, because throughout any manufacturing process, whether it be setup, startup, scrap, or what have you, there is always product that's left over and then ends up, unfortunately, going to landfill. So if we, and we soon will be successful in eliminating all polyester and all other materials other than linear low density from the plant, everything that we don't use, we can actually reuse and put right back into the product. And we've actually created a product that's now 40%, not to, I'm trying to, it's just, the content is going back into the package. It's not necessarily the percentage, but we're trying to get the plant down to an absolute zero waste. So everything that comes in gets used and nothing gets scrapped.
I guess from our standpoint, we've been working with Brascom bags, which is a sugar cane, different percentages to be able to claim on our packaging. We've gotten great feedback on that. We're doing a test right now on some PCR bags and for some of our treats. So we are kind of trying a few different avenues. I think, as was mentioned, just making sure that the package looks good, looks the same as some of the sustainable packaging that we have, and then looking to see how we can move that forward through more of our packaging.
And then from my standpoint, everyone who's here yesterday heard about Loop, and I think in terms of a success between marketing and the package, that is, it's an easy one to point to, because our marketing team, our brand team, is very excited about the chance to design something that a consumer would want to have on their kitchen countertop and drive daily treating, right? So if you put the bag in the pantry, it's a lot different story than having it right there every day. And it's a beautiful way to show our brand. But when it comes to flexible packaging, which is the vast majority of all of our products, well, at least dry and treats, it's really been a struggle. And I think just over the last year have we begun to really take the conversation seriously about what is the sustainability impact of our packaging. And we're not there yet. I think the reality is that until we can cross that threshold of saying this bag looks just as nice on shelf, it's going to be a real struggle. So we're looking at ways to impact that. What about our products that aren't sold on shelf? So can we do anything there differently that may not need the same we may be able to trade off some of the premium look on shelf for something that's going through e-com as an example.
Caitlin, did you want to weigh in before I look for some audience questions?
No, let's open up to the audience.
Okay, awesome. So you guys had a chance to think a little bit about packaging yesterday. I know we've had some great conversations at some of the tables. So what's on folks' minds this morning? You have brands, suppliers, recycling, a collaborative approach. What do you want to know about packaging?
Hi. I guess this question is for most of you on the panel. Anybody can take it that knows about this, and maybe all of you do, but supposedly there's a company out of Vietnam that now has this material called Veloflex that is 100% recyclable, number 4. I'm getting ready to transition to that, but have not pulled the trigger yet, and your talk yesterday concerned me a bit because I'm worried that if that were really on the horizon as something that's available now, you would have mentioned it. So what do you all know about this film and whether or not it's viable for recycling?
Do you want a sample of it?
I have a sample, but thank you very much. I'll take your card, though. This was supposed to have come online in July and have been the first recyclable flex packaging in the U.S. So I'm just wondering if I'm being sold down the river a little bit.
It is completely and totally recyclable. It is made from only linear low-density polyethylene. It's number 4, it's Trex certified.
Glenn, we can't really hear you in the back. Do you
Yeah.
mind doing that again in the mic?
Sorry, yeah, Veloflex is number 4. It is Trex certified. It is soon to be APR certified, which is the Association of Plastics Recyclers. So
So it's legitimate.
it is.
There are some other options out there. Our 100% recyclable is considered the number 4 also, and is Trex certified as well. So there are other options besides that.
I just want to clarify, so this is where important to work on the supply chain and the systems approach. So recyclable by design, yes. The collection system is a question. It is not going to be collected through curbside recycling. So it's going to be something that is going to be recyclable through a store drop-off program or some sort of take-back program, but not directly through a curbside bin.
So if it has a number 4, though, and the consumer buys it, they're going to assume that they can throw it into their bin.
Yes, so that's a challenge. So that's where and I've seen some great studies from Sustainable Packaging Coalition and some other groups. I pick up a product, and that's where I'm looking to find out, is it recyclable? So as a brand, as a designer, it's so important to put those instructions, like those quick tips, on the package itself. How to recycle label does have a store take back label that can go on there that gives some information about bringing it back to a store. Fully recyclable with plastic bags and other things. It's just they're not compatible with the curbside recycling.
I feel like that's sort of lying then to your consumer if you put the number 4 on it. I feel like there should be a standard, and how to recycle is great, and we've looked at that as well. I'm just concerned about opting for this and then having it not be legitimately recyclable. So I don't know if there's boilerplate around this sort of explanation or a different symbol that you can use with the number 4 that makes it clear. It's sort of like the compostable where you can't really just throw it in your backyard composter. So
Can I chip in here for a sec? Kate, can you explain what the numbers and the recycle thing means? Because I think people think that if it has the recyclable triangle on it, that means it's recyclable, and that's not necessarily the case, correct?
Yes, that is not the case. The numbers on there refer primarily to the resin, so it's helpful to identify the key resin type on the plastic. So typically you see 1 through 7. The recycling symbol was put on there by the plastics industry. It's not regulated. It does not mean recyclable. Sometimes people use it to mean recycled content. It has been a challenge for us and I think every consumer out there. So sorry that happened. Yeah, it really does not it really does not mean a lot. And in terms of what we are able to take at the recycling facility, what we are much more concerned about is the shape of the plastic in the container than necessarily the number. So we are basically able to recycle bottles, tubs, jugs, and jars. And if it does not fit into that category, like a film or a pouch, we can't take that. So we educate people based on shape, and kind of have moved away from the number system a little bit. Caitlin, I know you wanted to chime in on the question as well. You did it already. Okay.
Also, a question I get a lot, if I can put Kate, can you explain what store take back is and what that means?
Yes, great question. So the pouches, the bags, the 100% recyclable pouches, plastic bags are a great example of a product that is fully recyclable, right? Just like your computer is fully recyclable, but please don't put it in your curbside recycling bin, okay? These are products that have to be recycled through a slightly different system, that have some challenges with them. So store take back, if you've ever been to a grocery store that has one of those bins in the front that collects plastic bags, that is something that the pouches would be acceptable in, the pouches that are designed to be 100% recyclable. Those programs are quite prolific throughout the country, right? We've all been in a lot of stores that take them. You can see that you can set those programs up in your business. You can do it in your school. Lots of your communities might have other drop-offs. So it's a fairly robust infrastructure and growing. There's a lot of interest in the plastics film industry to expand that, because they are trying to capture more. You know, people are banning plastic bags around the country, so they're trying to go, wait, we stop banning them, we can recycle them. But it is very challenging from a recycling perspective. Those materials, a couple different reasons I won't get into, but from an equipment perspective, they're very hard for us to take them in the facility. And then when we're trying to sell them to a company to make new products, so Trex being the biggest buyer, Trex can't handle any moisture, right? So if you just threw those pouches into a recycling bin with your empty beer bottles and your soda cans, and it rained outside, and now those bags are wet and we can't sell them anymore because Trex doesn't want them. So the moisture is a huge issue with trying to get those bags recycled. So lots of kind of issues on the collection end of things.
Thank you. Alex, you got a question?
Sure. My question is, what must happen and when could it happen to have polyethylene that is 100% already recycled material and then be 100% recyclable on the back end?
Do you guys want to add? So we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 30-40% now. What are the barriers to 100% recycled content?
Right now, package integrity. So some of the virgin resins offer certain characteristics that a combination of recycled resin, you don't know what it all has in it. So you don't get some of those strengths and some of those attributes that a virgin resin will give you.
Yeah, I would agree with Brian. Sorry. The resin, is a carbon molecule like everything else, and every time it gets recycled, that carbon molecule gets broken down, just the same as paper does. So paper can start as, plain white for your photocopier, but it's going to end up as newspaper and newsprint, and as it goes down the recycle and as the molecules get broken down and recycled further and further. So as Brian says, you have to be very careful about how many times that product's been recycled. So you can get to a certain content, but once you reach there, then the structural integrity of something like a cat litter or a 40-pound bag of dog food becomes really problematic in the seal area because you've got product that's just unsecure. And to answer your question on the materials, I think that the proper thing to do for everybody is to really, if you're going to use a sustainable package and a sustainable claim, is properly communicate on the package what to do with that. Because ultimately, I think everybody wants as many of these bags to go to the proper place as possible. To deal with the recyclers is problematic, so putting them in the blue bin is problematic. A lot of places in the States don't have blue bins. I have two brothers who live in Fort Lauderdale. They just throw them in there is no blue bin. So I think there's a really great website I can give you that actually, if you put in your zip code, shows you all the places within a very short distance that you can drop materials off. Millennials, I have two of them, and so other than spending a lot of money, the other thing I know is they're much more environmentally conscious than certainly my generation was, and they're probably much more apt to actually drop them off at the store when they're going. But there's all the Lowe's, all the Kroger's, there's a lot of places you can actually take but communication on the package I think is important.
I just want to add a piece in there. So I do think it's absolutely important to communicate on package. But there's also, I think, companies who go out with well intentions and create their own logos around that. And that can make it really difficult to standardize, right? There's a reason that little recycling symbol has made everybody believe a certain thing, because it is standardized. And so I think when we're thinking about that role is how can you participate in some of these collaborative efforts where other enormous brands and other industries are also participating, so that we're all a part of the movement together. Because when we work together to educate the public, it works a lot better than creating our own symbols and our own visuals. And so I think it would be more impactful to participate in a program like How to Recycle than to create your own thing.
Great, what other questions do we have? I think they can hear you, but for the people in the back, MRD, do you want to stand it up?
Sure. So, sorry, I have a little contribution to the last conversation and then a question. So, to what we were just talking about, I do think I'm sort of rehashing, but I think it is incumbent upon us as brands, if we're going to go down the path of offering recycled packaging, that we do need to make it very clear to the consumer what that means, and we're struggling with that already. And Glenn and I were talking about this yesterday. There's a number of ways to do it. The How to Recycle thing that Caitlin just mentioned is part of the Packaging Sustainability Coalition. I don't know that we've really covered that real clearly. That's a nonprofit that's basically working to solve sustainability issues in the packaging industry in general, and they've developed a program with a logo that's standard across the industry that you can put on your package, and then there's a website that you go to and explains very clearly what you can and cannot do with that type of package. So that's definitely one option. The website that Glenn mentioned is something we're going to look into too. That's obviously really an interesting idea. You just put in your zip code and it tells you where you can take it. But I just think the onus is on us as brands that if we're going to go down the recyclable path, we really have to make it clear. Otherwise, we're just going to make it worse, as Kate has told us, right? If people just start throwing these things in their bins, we're not helping anything. So, yes, ma'am.
Here we go.
Hi again. I know, I just can't not talk. So there's been a lot of talk about recycling. And recycling requires participation from the public. Now, Kate, could you tell us how many people participate in recycling in the United States?
I'm sure all of you. Right? So, great question. So, more people recycle than vote.
Well, that's why we have a problem.
But I will say recycling does vary quite a bit by zip code. You just heard Fort Lauderdale. You've got quite a bit of the country that has no recycling. It's more challenging in rural areas for sure. A lot of people have commented about the great job some places like this do in Boulder. So it's definitely very disparate across the country. I can't say exactly how many recycle, but I can say that we only recycle about 35% of our waste, and we've sort of been flatlined there for a long time. And the people who participate in store take-back programs are a much smaller percentage of people than who recycle at the curb. So we definitely have a participation challenge and a collection challenge, but I would also spin this a little bit in that our shopping is changing, right? E-commerce is changing a lot of things. So all of a sudden you've got somebody coming to your door every day. What does it look like to take the packaging back that way, like a loop system or with other pouches? So I think we're on the forefront of a lot of different innovations that might change how we interact with things.
Okay, so did you have a national average there? What's the national average of people who participate?
Most people participate. They don't participate particularly well, but most people recycle at least a few things. And so I can't give you an actual number, but the majority of people do recycle.
And how about in the state of Colorado?
State of Colorado is terrible at recycling. I've been down at the state legislature telling them literally we're terrible at recycling. Colorado has really cheap landfills, some of the cheapest in the country. If you flew over eastern Colorado, we got a lot of room out there. And we don't do a great job of providing curbside recycling to most of our residents. So Boulder, great job. Fort Collins, Denver, a little bit. But some of our big cities are lacking some very basic infrastructure.
So the reason I asked this is I just wanted to share a little bit. PetSmart helped to sponsor some research this year with the Pet Sustainability Coalition for us to actually model what would a take-back program with both independent and large retailers look like for our industry. And we modeled what that would look like and what it would take to be successful. And that research is back, and we haven't released it yet. But we struggle, recycling actually isn't the end goal. So if you remember Kate's presentation yesterday, right, we're trying to close the entire circle. And that's still beginning to end of use resources, and then it ends up into a recycling, and then maybe it's made into something else, but then it's eventually in a landfill. And so I just want to mention and remind everybody that let's also remember that it's not the total end goal. Our recycling system is really broken. China doesn't want it anymore. I'm sure you've been following this issue, big issue as well. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
Marty, you had a question.
Just one other quick thing. On the recyclability, talking about that, everybody's known glass, right? Glass has been one of the first original items that we can recycle. I was shocked. I'm on a couple committees with the SPC. 2 meetings ago, we were informed that a number of the large municipalities in the United States are no longer accepting glass for recyclability because there's not a market for it anymore. So it costs them more to recycle it than what they can sell it for. So they've stopped taking glass as recyclable. Who would have thought that?
Okay, so before Caitlin interrupted me, I was going to ask a question. I'm just kidding, and actually, but I'm going to respond to Caitlin first. So, I'm going to reinforce what she said, which is that it's a big, hairy, complicated question, and we as a brand are grappling with it because recyclability alone is not the answer for sure. Using recycled content is part of it. There is the plant-based material, which is something that we've been using for a couple of years now. We're sort of trying to figure this out all the time, but it is a big, hairy, complex question. The good news is the Pet Sustainability Coalition is committed to helping us as an industry wrap our arms around it and find the best solution. So we're working on it. My question was to Kate. And this, I was tossing and turning all night thinking about this issue, of course, and I was thinking about the compostable issue. And we know that compostable is not really the solution because, A, most people don't have composting available, way less even than recycling, obviously. But what about just from a carbon footprint perspective and easier on the environment, especially if it gets loose in the environment, it doesn't make it into the trash. It is compostable, so it would break down. Is a bio-based package have a lower or higher carbon footprint than a petroleum-based one? Just kind of curious about that.
Yeah, great question, and thank you. I was just thinking, we've been talking a lot about recycling. I know there's composting questions out there, so perfect. There was a great study done out of Oregon Department of Environmental Quality just this past summer about whether recyclable or compostable means better for the environment. And they looked at over 150 different life cycle analysis studies, and they looked at how often compostable was actually better for the environment in terms of reduced carbon footprint and a number of different factors. And if you know anything about life cycle analysis, they're complicated and they're wonky, and they don't often tell you one is always better than the other. It's always, well, it's better in these categories, but not in this category. But compostable actually came out fairly poorly. It was pretty strong. It was a pretty strong case that compostable, just as if the product is compostable, it does not necessarily mean it's better for the environment. And part of that is the way compostable is right now. It doesn't mean that won't change over time, and some products are different, like sugarcane. and algae and all the cool things we might soon be able to make products out of. But right now, most of our compostables are made out of PLA, which is made from corn. It's a GMO crop. It's a monoculture crop. It requires huge amounts of pesticides, fertilizers. There's a lot of fossil fuel input into making that corn and making that product. And so that's where it actually has a much higher carbon footprint, and actually where it actually performs really poorly is in water quality, because there's such a high amount of pesticides and fertilizers that go into growing corn. There's a lot of then runoff into Gulf of Mexico and a lot of our waterways because of that. So as it stands right now, most of the stuff on the shelf is not necessarily a better product. We have a lot of people ask us, well, yeah, should I just buy compostable and then throw it away? Is that still better? And it's like, not really. But I do think that there is a ton of innovation happening in this space. There's a lot of research into bio-based, so I think we will see that changing. But it's just good to know like the current production systems are not necessarily as groovy as we think they would be.
And to take that another step beyond the science, in the real world, problem with compostable, it can't take drop test. So it can handle probably up to 2 pounds. Anything over top of that, it blows out. You're never gonna have a 5-pound pet food package that could sustain a drop test on compostable.
So we just did this life cycle analysis with Earth Animal, and we were looking at the difference in impact for this new monoresin recyclable package. And it turns out that it has to be thicker and heavier. And when we looked at least currently, the model of it, regardless of what the end of life impacts are, the production of that package is actually where the biggest impacts are. So I'm wondering if some of our suppliers here, and maybe Kate, could talk about what are the advancements happening in reducing the impact of that production portion of the packaging, because that's where so much of the impacts are concentrated. You don't believe me?
Well, it's not that I don't believe you. So I mean, it depends upon the weight of the package. So if you've got a 5 kg, 10-pound bag, you're looking at currently probably a 12 micron or a 48 gauge polyester to a 4.5 mil polyethylene. Overall thickness.
You just went package talk on me.
So you need so much package to hold the product, okay? The recyclability, the number 4, everything we're doing with monopolymers is still very, very early in technology. Back, when you guys were young, we were down gauging. So we were taking products that were oversized and we were saying, okay, for 5 pounds, we'll give you this much product package. And when we went through a whole series of down gauging, so we went from thick polyester to thinner polyester and reducing the polyethylene, using better polyethylenes, produce a smaller package. So if you use, believe it or not, a virgin polyethylene is going to be stronger than a recycled polyethylene. That's just the fact of the matter. So you can produce a thinner package using less package to contain the same product. I don't think you necessarily, and again, we're just at the infancy, so more advancements will come as the product gets better and better. And it will become more and more like the current product you have on the shelf. I can say honestly, I think 2 years ago, there's no way we could produce the package we produce today. And there's a lot of advancements coming. We're not the only packaging guys in this room, and I know that every other packaging guy in this room and person in this room is doing the same thing. This is an evolving study and an evolving process. We're still at the beginning, but we're making really good advancements.
Yeah, for us, in the example that Glenn gave, exactly 48 gauge polyester to a 4.5 mil for like a 10-pound package, we're at total 5 mil overall. Our 100% recyclable is a 5 mil total structure. So we do not have to go up in mil thickness to be able to get a package that holds in as the same as current.
Right. Uh-oh, we're in trouble.
Okay, so maybe I phrased the question incorrectly. So maybe it's not because it's heavier, but when we looked at the end-of-life improvements for a recyclable package, it didn't end up outweighing the production costs of the comparison between the packages. So if you look at a life cycle analysis of where is the biggest impact, is it in the extraction? Is it in the production? Is it in the transportation? Is it in the end of life? There's a lot of conversation around the end of life. The highest impact category was in the production of the packaging. So my question is, what are the innovations going on in the production portion to help decrease that cost? And maybe you did answer, maybe you said we've really been working on using less of what's required, and maybe that's where a lot of that improvement came from.
So I think this ties into the Ben and Jerry's talk yesterday. It was like, where's the production impact, right? It's in the dairy, it's in the farm, and we get focused a lot on end of life. And so I think that's where most of the LCAs that came out of that Oregon study that I mentioned did say that the higher the amount of recycled content in the product, the lower the environmental footprint to start. So that's definitely something, the more post-consumer recycled content you can be using in your product helps reduce that impact. And then that's also where we can continue to push for some of the other production improvements in terms of, is your facility using renewable energy? Like how efficient are you in other stages of the production process, not just the material itself? Where is it produced? How far around the world? Those sorts of things.
I promise we'll come back there. I promise.
So I'm still trying to wrap my, hi, I don't know who to face. Hi, everybody. Hi, guys. So I'm still trying to wrap my head around, Alex, was it, your question? So, and Brian, you sort of mentioned this a little bit. Alex, you asked if it was kind of like if there was a place that it could be infinitely recyclable. And I think, Brian, you said, look, our stream isn't clean enough. So what I'm trying to wrap my head around, and we've kind of talked about virgin versus not, is if the stream was clean enough, could plastic ever be to the place that aluminum is or that lead batteries are for cars, where if we could get it clean enough, we could just keep producing the same stuff over and over again? I mean, is that really the crux, or is plastic just one of those things that's like tough cookies? This thing is always going to be needing more.
So, great follow-up to Alex's question. Yeah, so as talked yesterday about the chemical washing, so that's probably where it could end up. So the design of chemical washing is to basically separate the multi-layer structures back into their original form. So polyester, it gets broken off and goes this way. Linear low, that's a sealant, goes this way. So now you are kind of back to your base resins, right? What's going to be driving that is the resin manufacturers. So Dow Chemical, Exxon, those guys are going to be out there. They're spending tens of millions of dollars right now trying to develop that secondary market because they know it's coming. They're not there yet, but they are spending the resources and the money to try to drive to get to that point. Europe is ahead of us, as they've been forever. They started stand-up pouches way before we did. They did spouts and fitments way before we did. They're 4 to 5 years ahead of us on this process. So, but again, there's some unknowns there. Chemical washing, a lot of it's done high-pressure water to separate the layers. Again, what does that have the impact on all the water that has to be used to do that? So there's the questions that are out there. Hope that answered your question.
All right. Slowly working my way back.
Hi. I know so little about this that I hope my question isn't just like hopelessly naive, but talking about the cleanliness of the recycling stream, at what point is it economically viable for companies that package things to provide postage like ink suppliers do, to do a take back directly to the company, so you have a single stream of you're closing the loop for your own stuff, bringing it back, and can you sell that directly to Trex or whoever you have a partnership with to make that an economically viable closed loop system?
Well, I can only speak to Trex. They have 32,000 drop-off spots currently in the United States. The cost of the postage, I think, I guess it goes back to the golden wish. Okay, we need the end solution, so we can create the package. Okay, now what happens to it? The store drop-off is working. It's great. You've got people like Trex that are using vast amounts of this material. something like 480,000 bags are used to make the average deck. So it's, we need better collection, and it's going to take a change in human behavior. Whether that is the human behavior of when you go to buy more dog food, you drop off the bag when you were, the last bag when you were there, or whatever it is, it's going to absolutely change and demand a human behavior. It's probably also going to require a little bit of government assistance. In Europe, there was a lot of government assistance, which is you either go here or you don't go. So I don't think, knowing as a Canadian much about the United States, but I think under your current administration, that might not be the path you're heading. That might be a stretch, but it's going to take divine intervention of some kind, and whether that be human, but it's going to take a behavioral change.
I'm wondering, Robert, if you want to weigh in. I mean, this is essentially what Loop is.
Right, and so I think the challenge, or the thing that makes Loop viable is the fact that the package doesn't need to be, it just needs to be cleaned. And I think if we were to look at paying for a package to come back to us, that then we pay somebody to recycle, or maybe we can get Trex to buy it. It just doesn't, the economics, they don't work pure and simple. And so I think that's really the challenge. Now, if there was a way to clean the bag and fill it and seal it again, maybe there is something there. I actually had a question to go to the panel. We haven't been talking about secondary packaging at all. So you noted earlier, e-com is booming. The amount of cardboard this country is using is on a tremendous growth. Is that a problem for the recycling system today, or how long before it is?
We actually have been experiencing what we call the Amazon effect in the recycling industry, and to be honest, we're kind of thrilled. Not in the use of cardboard, right? But it's coming at the same time where newspaper has incredibly declined, and newspaper was about 70% of what we used to collect for recycling. So as we were seeing a huge decline in revenue in paper, all of a sudden we started to see this increase in cardboard, and we were like, oh, thank God there's more money coming in the door. So ultimately, it's not where we'd like it to be. I was at the Green Biz Sustainability Conference this year, and there's a lot of talk about circular e-commerce. How do we get those pouches, not the flex pouches, but the shipping containers, right? How do we get those reusable and going back and forth? And much rather see that as an industry than more and more cardboard. But it kind of came at a good time for us.
All right, what other questions we got? Steffi.
Yeah, can you guys talk about some of the differences between biodegradable and degradable? Is there a difference?
The state of California is one of the differences. So there's a lot of things you can't say in the state of California that you can say other places. Biodegradable in the state of California has a totally different set of rules and regulations as it pertains to the other areas. So the term biodegradable can mean a number of different things. The challenge is when you get into the legislation and the claims you can make. Then it comes to what we were talking about earlier, which is the identification and what you put on the package. So how you claim that and how what is the end use. Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's not a loop. It's never going to loop. So you're taking something and you're just going to hopefully make it go away. One of the things you probably should never do is use and we talked about this yesterday, which is what's called an oxo-degradable product, because that is basically going to take a large package and make it very, very, very small. And if I was going to clean a beach, I'd much rather pick up something that's large than something I can't even see. And those are the kinds of things that are ending up in seafood.
What other questions we got? I'd like to say the back half of the room, I hear lots and lots of whispering. Now is your time. All right, Andy.
I just wanted to ask, what are some practical solutions that you're working on right now, maybe beyond film plastics, but for example, I know the springs in spray bottles can be problematic for recyclers. What are just simple, practical things that you're working on right now that you're seeing make even an incremental difference in the recycling process or the front end of the loop?
One of the simplest one is right sizing. So a lot of packaging, you know, whether you started out at an 8-pound package, now you're down to 7 pounds, you left the package the same size. So, you know, just to right size that package it's simple, it's easy, and you could take, you know, 5 to 10% material out of that package right now. And there's no smoke mirrors, there's no special foo-foo dust, it's just common sense to get it to the right size.
Yeah, I think we're seeing a lot of innovation in terms of the spring and the lotion pumps. There's actually a metal part in there, so when we send it off to the plastics recycling, it's a problem. So companies are trying to design that to be plastic. There's lots of small tweaks being made. The right sizing is huge. I will say, just overall, there is so much more innovation happening in in packaging design. Right, there's like whole teams of packaging designers. We don't have teams of recycling designers, right? We're like dinosaurs in the room. I mean, honestly, we are, as an industry, we are years behind where you guys are in packaging design. We're still trying to catch up to the materials that are in the curbside bin right now and how that's changed. And that's a really hard system because a lot of cities and counties are the ones in charge of making those decisions, and they don't have the budget to invest in the fancy equipment or catch up on product design. So there's definitely a disconnect between who runs that trash and recycling industry and then, you know, who makes those products. So that's why it's so great to be part of this type of conversation where you can see kind of the ripple effect of things.
With an eye to that disconnect, I'm curious about the quality piece of it, specifically with the packaging, and as we look at going to more sustainable packaging, how that impacts the moisture and the oxygen barrier for the quality of the product.
So in the 100% recyclable option, Dow has come up with a product called Retain. So what it is, it's a EVOH material that breaks down and is 100% recyclable, and has been certified by Trex as 100% recyclable. So with the other materials that you have to do on an all polyethylene structure, put a little high D, I'm getting a little over the top here, but put a little high D in there for the stiffness that you need. So between the high density and the Retain resin, you can have 100% recyclable structure that has MVTR and OTR of less than 0.1 without a problem. So getting a 9-month shelf life, not an issue.
Great. Come in.
So this may be a little bit of a tangent, but as an owner of a urban pet store, I deal with a lot of poop bags. And does anybody have any advice on what the best choice is to advise people? Because I have the ones that the plastic ones that break down quick. I have the compostable and like kind of the corn biodegradable. And everybody's trying to do the best thing, but we're pretty stumped.
I get this question about trash bags too, like what's the best trash bag I can use? It is the one made from the highest amount of recycled content. So particularly you can get those black bags that are almost 100% post-consumer content. You're essentially guaranteeing that we as recyclers have something we can sell our materials into and somebody's going to make it into a product. So from the studies that I've seen, that would be my recommendation.
We have a question in the back here of, I think it was Glenn who mentioned oxy, I can't talk. Oxy biodegradable. Can you just explain for some people in the back here who don't know what that is?
It's an additive that is put into the polyethylene or the polyester at the time of manufacture. And what it is it's an additive that promotes the breakdown of the package. And so it will accelerate. A typical package, a 30-pound bag, is going to last between 800 and 1,200 years in a landfill, and then it will just break down into microplastics. This just accelerates that process exponentially. So it'll happen during our lifetime, not our great. Yeah.
I'm coming.
Another question. Yesterday it was discussed that there's possibly a chemical solution to plastic recycling on the horizon. And every so often you hear about like a bacteria or a fungus in a landfill that has evolved to start eating plastic. Is there a biological solution on the horizon that could handle all of the plastic we're producing?
Great question. We got some great folks down the road at NREL, National Renewable Energy Lab. They gave us a presentation at the Sustainable Packaging Coalition Summit this week about how they're looking at enzymes and microbes that do break down plastic. It was fascinating. Nobody in the room understood chemistry, so it went like this over most of us. But so they're looking at it. It was years before market, absolutely, and no ideas of cost or anything like that. But it's definitely, people are out there looking at it.
We have time for one more.
Oh, Kate, yesterday you mentioned the increase in labeling of products, even as simple as ticket to store drop off where this cannot be recycled. Are there standards around labeling for reuse?
So Loop does have a reuse label. So as part of, so Loop in particular, any package developed and launched on the platform essentially from now on has to have a Loop symbol on it to show that it is meant for reuse. But just like the plastics industry, with adding the little triangle, Loop is just doing that on their own. There's no standard across the industry to say this needs to be reused. And as I think as brands, we're certainly talking about how to recycle and how you label that. The issue today is that our bags would all say, this bag is not recyclable, which is not the marketing statement that you want to put on the bag. I don't know of any pet food company already has made that, but that's a tough sell to your marketing team.
I do think, Kashi had me thinking, not recyclable yet, but in transition might be something we can all work on together. I do want to say, I know packaging is complex, right? A lot of people tell me, I had no idea recycling was so complicated. I'm like, oh yeah, we can talk. But I just want to give a shout out to Caitlin for pulling us together and for everybody being up here. We're having the conversation across the board, across lots of industries like we have never had before. We've been in the recycling business for 40 years. People call us all the time like, why can't I recycle this? Don't you talk to packagers all the time? And we're like, no. So, what we're seeing, the plastics in the ocean, the problems with China not taking recycling anymore, it has shifted the conversation monumentally. And I think we are on the forefront of a lot of big changes happening, finally having some of these conversations that get to some of those fundamental questions. So I just want to say, as frustrating as it can be that there is no silver bullet, I think it's so encouraging that these types of conversations are happening, and there's so much collaboration potential, both within this room as well as with other industries across the board.
I also want to do a quick plug. As the mic is working its way back to Caitlin, I just want to emphasize this is a conversation I know we're all having, and you're not in this alone, right? I talk to people all the time that are asking me, or emailing me, calling me about packaging questions. My first question is, well, we have webinars and a toolkit and a case studies and LCA tools. Have you checked it out? We have an entire section of packaging on our toolkit. We're about to do our second packaging webinar of the year. We have lots of industry experts that we're talking to on a very regular basis. I can always put you in touch with anybody up here on this stage. So I know this is a conversation we're all having. We're all having it internally, but you have PSC in your corner, and we're here to help. And as everybody's been alluding to today, we're going to all come to solutions that are better for the environment and better for our businesses if we're doing it together. right?
I just wanted to add one more thing on the labeling thing, because it really is critical. So everybody in this room, because you're sustainable, everybody knows what the Morbius loop with number 1 in it is, right? So if you know what number 1 is, put your hand up. Okay, and you know what number 5 is, right? Okay, so the packaging people are all putting their hands up, which is great. The problem is that we've created, or somebody created, the code number 7. Okay, and just so you're all aware, number 7 means non-recyclable. So if you have a package in the market, I encourage you, please don't put number 7 on it, because that means that, mom at home doesn't know what the numbers mean. I think that's a pretty safe statement. My wife doesn't know what the friggin' numbers mean. So I'm the guy in the garage. No. So if you can, just as a responsible thing, try and avoid using that number 7. It's there. I understand it. But it's going to fool somebody into think, oh, it's got the loop on it. Just as a word.
All right, so one comment before we have break and snack. These are fine people who are courageous to come sit on the stage, because this is a little bit of a hard conversation to have. And I want to be honest with you that about 80% of the people that I reached out to come up here and be on stage said no. So it's hard, I know, for our industry to have these harder conversations, but this is the best room to be having them, because we have people who truly are committed to the movement. And so I want to say that I don't think it's fair for brands to be just expecting suppliers as well to have these solutions ready for market, that we need to help them invest in these solutions, right? And then if they bring something to you and they say, it's not perfect, but it's getting there, like, we can't just say, I'm going to wait till that's perfect, because we need to be a part of bringing these all to market and that improvement process too. So I really want to thank our suppliers for being willing to sit on stage and take questions. Oh, definitely free ice cream for everybody.